Who are we? We tend to think of ourselves, our identities, as reasonably fixed. I might consider myself a warm person, a person who enjoys spirited debate, a self-aware person. I've changed over time, to be sure. The penchant for death metal, the long hair, they're both gone, as is much of the self-loathing I experienced as a teenager. But I'm still me. There's a core to my being which is unchanging. And if it did change, I wouldn't really be myself anymore. But according to many social theorists, this is simply untrue. Instead of the inner essence I just described, I might have a self-image which is formed by my interactions with others, or even no essential self-image at all. The core idea here is simple. Who we are is shaped by socialization, the people, groups, institutions, and ideas that we are surrounded by. It's also intuitive. No matter how much we might wish to stress that we are our own person, we have to admit that a lot of our identity, our beliefs, ideas, opinions, preferences, is a product of our circumstances. When we accept the premise of socialization, though, two questions still remain. First, how far does it go? Are we entirely products of society, or is there some kind of natural essence to our character and identity? And second, how does it work? It's all well and good to acknowledge that our environment contributes to our character, but that doesn't give us a framework for understanding how it does so. And ideas without supporting frameworks aren't social theory, they're Jaden Smith tweets. There are as many theories of the self as there are theorists, but instead of going into all of them, in this video I want to explore one of the most prominent and influential accounts in sociology, and that's Charles Cooley's looking glass self. Cooley says that the framework for his theory comes from the idea that the human mind is social, and this allows our mind to be mental. That is, our mental abilities, particularly in imagining ourselves, directly result from human social interaction. He locates his empirical evidence, his practical evidence for this, in observations of children, whom he sees as skillful managers of self-presentation, almost from the very beginning. The context of our socialization allows us to define ourselves, and it's this idea that underpins the rest of his conceptual analysis. The looking glass self is a concept originally drawn from the work of George Herbert Mead, encapsulating the idea that our self-image, the mental idea we have of who and how we are, is shaped by our interactions with others. And this has 3 steps. First, we imagine how we appear to another person. Second, we imagine what judgments that person makes of us based on our appearance and the way we present ourselves. Third, we imagine how that person feels about us on the basis of the judgments they've made. And it's common to see people interpret this theory as one that encapsulates the ubiquitous, rampant insecurity of the modern human condition. In an age characterized by the proliferation of social media, 1,000 shoddy opinion pieces have been written in an attempt to use the looking glass self, or what they imagine the looking glass self to be, to bemoan a generation lost to narcissism and obsession with self-presentation. But the problem is, this misses most of the important nuance of Cooley's ideas. On face, this concept might look like one in which the individual is passive. We're constantly beholden to the judgments of others, shaped by their impressions of us. But this couldn't be further from the truth. The important thing to clarify is that Cooley doesn't see this process as a one-way internalization of others' perceptions. Instead, we play an active role in trying to shape how others perceive, judge, and feel about us. In fact, Cooley specifically focuses on our participation in forming our self-image, and he stresses 3 things. First, the active role the individual plays in interpreting the perceived responses of others. And that means that we can't know, how we actually appear to other people. All we can know is how we imagine we appear. If you go out to a karaoke bar on a Friday night, you will encounter a surfeit of people who think they appear tuneful, articulate, and soulful, even if how they actually appear to you is as the physical and audible embodiment of nails dragging down a chalkboard. Our perceptions of others' judgment can be highly inaccurate. And this applies to the second and third steps as well. We cannot know how others judge us or how they feel about us. Instead, we depend on our imagination, either thinking about how they might react when we're looking in the mirror, or observing their responses and attempting to infer from those to their inner thoughts, to their ruminations. What this means is that our self-image is shaped by others, but only through the mediation of our own mind. Second, Cooley stresses the individual's selective application of the looking glass self. The reason this concept doesn't predict or explain constant, crippling insecurity on the part of every single person in society, like some kind of pound shop version of Black Mirror, is because we aren't constantly engaging with it. There are some circumstances in which we care more about others' perceptions of us than others. If I'm, moving anonymously through a city I've never visited before, I might be less self-conscious than I would be on a date with someone that I'm absolutely infatuated with. And we have the capacity to care more about some things than others, and our self-image is no exception to this rule. Third, and finally, Cooley says we use the looking glass self to control and manipulate the responses and evaluation of others. Because we are aware that others are watching us, reacting to us, and judging us, he says, we're able to use that knowledge to shape the impressions we try to give off. This means, for example, that a person might boast to their friends about the sheer volume of alcohol they consumed last weekend, recounting in painstaking and frankly quite boring detail every shot, every bottle, every glass, every can, because they think that doing so will impress their peers and win them respect and street cred, or whatever the kids are calling street cred since the end of the 1990s. They would be less likely to tell their boss about this event in any great detail, and they might even go out of their way to hide it, upping the privacy settings on their social media profiles, untagging themselves from incriminating photos, and taking pains to appear a functional human being on a Monday morning. Making sure that we're able to selectively control the context that people see different parts of us in is really important to us. And one of the problems with social media is it often prevents us from doing that. In imagining how others will respond to our actions and presentation, we allow ourselves to manage the kind of self-image we attempt to project. But, crucially, as Cooley highlights, there is no way to truly know what others think of us.